Hey Dan and Nikki, this is a response to Dan, your last few videos, the one when you were on the elliptical trainer from February 16th, and then the one from your hike into Hell's Canyon. So the elliptical trainer, we'll talk about that one first. The elliptical trainer video was the one where you spoke about, you were talking about my response to your video about your cognitive dissonance. Is that what you called it? Anyway, and I've got some notes somewhere about that. I have to tell you, I was oddly seasick after watching that video. After 5 minutes of watching you kind of bounce up and down and move back and forth, I went and took some Dramamine, which really helped. Um, the pattern recognition theory, I think you're onto something there. Um, Especially when we are thinking about other things, or I notice that when I'm thinking about other things or I'm doing other things, that I'm much more quickly trying to recognize a pattern, I guess. So today was a good example. I was driving downtown on a street I drive all the time, and I get to an intersection and I stop, and I'm waiting for this car on my right to go because he was at the stop sign first. It took me about 20 seconds to realize that I didn't have a stop sign, and then I'm looking up and I'm thinking, well, of course I don't have a stop sign. I've never had a stop sign at this intersection, and I honestly have no idea why it was I stopped. And clearly I was thinking about other things, but I don't know if that's if that's the kind of thing you're referring to or not. But I think you're right when you were talking about why it is you mistook the cream for the gel. I think you're right on about that. You just had in your head that, okay, this shape is the cream, and that shape is is the gel, or however it is you said it. And I guess that's why at parking lots at airports they always have, I'm parked in lot number 3B green dinosaur. I guess something for everyone. Of course, it always could be that you're just plain nuts. I think Nikki has been oddly silent. Probably she's too busy hitting, water and air foul with her car. But yeah, you're right. I'm constantly using Galen instead of Preston when I'm talking about Nordic skiing, but not with cross country, of course, because he never ran cross country. One of the other things that I used to do all the time, Dan, and maybe you can explain this to me, is I would frequently call Duncan Dan. So I'm sure you can probably put some sort of psychological Freudian read on that. I'm not sure exactly what that would be, but anyway, I thought that was, when we were talking about the substitution of Galen and Preston's name, I thought that was pretty funny. And when you said you take it for granted that people take what you say with a grain of salt, that's interesting because I never really have. I thought a lot about that when you said that, and I often feel when you speak, especially when you speak very demonstratively, that I probably shouldn't disagree, and it makes me wonder if I completely misunderstood, a situation. And so it's funny because I think I'm doing exactly what you're doing, just so what we end up with is no conversation when in fact that's what we both want. So anyway, I thought that was funny. On to your Hell's Canyon trip. That looked like an awesome trip. I mean, obviously you know that, right? Because you were on it. But that was it was really beautiful. On those first shots, I thought for sure you were heading up there to Brokeback Mountain, and that's where you guys were going. Not that that's maybe came out the wrong way. Anyway, it looked like something out of Montana, and I just was hoping you guys were heading up into the snow to do a little snowshoeing. Not that the Imnaha River I mean, that trail was beautiful when you guys were walking in on it. I mean, it looked really, easily traversable, and it was just sort of narrow. It was kind of pinned in. It was just, God, it was really pretty. I did notice though right away that video was unlisted. It took me a little bit to figure out why you had sent me that email. Actually, I don't know if you know, but I do check fairly regularly, probably twice a day, to see if you posted videos. Most times. But I did notice that video was unlisted. I'm curious as to why. So, how long? Oh, can I go back? No, I'll come to the end. How long was the hike in to your camp spot? It looked lengthy, but I couldn't really, obviously I had no way of telling on the video. I mean, so in terms of time and distance, how long was that? That thing that flashed over Eric's mouth was, I couldn't tell. You didn't cut the video. You didn't cut the audio out. So what was he doing that you were hiding? It took me, I actually had to stop it and go back and look at it several times. I thought there was some secret message there in that clip that you put over, but I realized it's just that dead thing that you saw later on in the video. One thing I was curious about, why was Eric carrying 2 bags in his hands? It was like he was walking out of the grocery store on a really long hike. So it was like he was coming back from the grocery store on a 5-mile hike. So why didn't he put those things in his pack? Or put them in your pack, or put them on the dog or something. So anyway, I just thought that was curious that he was carrying those things, and that would drive me crazy. Obviously his arms didn't get tired, but because he kept carrying them. Speaking of Eric though, did you ever notice that he looked kind of like Billy Bob Thornton? There's a couple of times when he was talking, it reminded me completely of Billy Bob Thornton. Where's your fancy tent? You set up camp, but you didn't have your fancy tent. I actually refer to it as the bourgeois bungalow. But, the other guys had fancy tents. Where was your fancy tent? Or was it that the weather was such that you didn't figure you were going to need it? Speaking of the weather, it looked awesome. I mean, clearly there on that second day, Patrick was walking around in short sleeve shirt and shorts, so it was not obviously 10 degrees out. But I mean, if I remember, when we were living in Pullman, I don't think we had any kids yet, but Brad and Linda and Beth and I went down to Hell's Canyon just for like a day barbecue down to Pittsburgh Landing. And I remember this was in the middle of winter, and it was really, like significantly warmer down there. So, I mean, not that it's not warm anyway. Good Lord. I mean, it looks really, really pleasant. Hold on. I'm going to look right now. I mean, it looks really pleasant out there in Pendleton and Colfax-ish. Hold on. I'm going to check because I want to speak. Let's see. It's 1 degree in Bayfield, 46 in Pendleton. It's going to be 60 degrees tomorrow. Good Lord. Colfax is going to be 55 degrees. My gosh. Well, hold on. Let's look in Monroe. Oh, wow. It's currently 59 degrees in Monroe. Wow. So anyway, we're not getting anything like that. So I'm glad that your hike, that you had weather like that, looked awesome. There was one point where it looked like there were some clouds coming in. You thought it was going to rain, and I'm not sure if it ever did. But so that was day 1. Day 2. Who's Patrick? You said he was kind of an old friend of Eric and your neighbor, Scott Fairley. And one thing I was curious about, with this group, how many guns did you have actually out there at the campsite? Did anybody have a gun? I know you probably had some fairly large knives, but something tells me somebody, at least, maybe Scott, had at least one gun. I'm just sort of idly curious. Let's see. What the hell does that say? Oh, you lost your battery. I'm assuming you have another one at home, and that they're probably expensive. There was a point where you were shooting off into the distance and there was a herd of something running. Were those wild horses? I couldn't quite tell what they were. So I've never actually seen what do you call them? Not a herd. Do you call them a herd of wild horses? A murder of wild horses? Anyway. What you were talking about? There were some foundations down there along the Snake River. What were those from? And how long ago were those? Any idea? Um, so let's see, and then I guess that's it. But it looked like a really nice trip. So you guys were out 3 days, right? You left on Friday, you got back on Sunday. Um, yeah, I could do that. I could be into that, especially if there was somewhere I could swim, like at the campsite. The river couldn't have been that cold, so it was flowing a little fast, though, judging by the jet boat. So anyway, that's all I've got. So I'm going to finish this. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.